Have you ever had that moment where you're speaking English, and halfway through a sentence, your brain screams at you, "They're judging me right now. They're laughing inside. They think I sound stupid." Yeah, I know that feeling. Because I've lived that feeling. But here's the truth I wish someone had told me earlier. Most people are not judging your English. They're just trying to understand your idea. And that's your real goal, not perfect grammar, not flawless pronunciation, not sounding like a native, but communication. Hi, my friends. My name is Daniel, and welcome back to this channel. If you've been with me for a while, you know this isn't just about English tips. It's about mindset, confidence, and building the courage to use English in your real life. Today, I want to tell you a personal story that changed the way I speak, the way I listen, and the way I think about learning a language. This story is about shame, about fear, about making mistakes in front of others. But it's also about breakthrough. And by the end of this video, I hope you'll see English in a new way, not as a performance to be judged, but as a bridge to be understood. So let's start from the beginning. When I was first learning English, I had this deep, paralyzing fear. Not of the language itself, but of people. I wasn't afraid of grammar books. I wasn't afraid of vocabulary lists. I wasn't even afraid of reading or listening. I was afraid of that moment when someone would look me in the eye as I was speaking, and I'd feel exposed. Do you know that moment? You start a sentence, your words stumble. Maybe you mispronounce something. Maybe you forget the word you wanted to use. And suddenly you imagine their thoughts. Wow, they don't know English very well. That sounds silly. They must not be smart. And then the shame hits like a wave. I can remember one specific moment in school. We were in class, and the teacher asked a simple question. I knew the answer. I really did. But the words wouldn't come. My heart was beating so fast. My hands were sweating. And I thought to myself, if I open my mouth, everyone will laugh at me. They'll hear my accent. They'll hear my mistakes. They'll know I don't belong here. So, I stayed silent. And you know what? That silence hurt more than any mistake I could have made. Fast forward a few years. I was older, maybe more confident. At least I thought I was. But then came the moment that tested me again. I was at a cafe with a group of friends. Most of them were native English speakers. And one of them asked me about my home country. I was excited. This was my chance to share something about myself, to tell a story. So I began. I started to describe my city, the food, the traditions. And halfway through, I blanked. Completely blanked. I forgot a simple word. My tongue froze. I stumbled. I could feel my cheeks getting hot. My inner voice shouted, "See? They're judging you, you're embarrassing yourself. Stop talking." But here's what actually happened. Instead of laughing, my friend leaned in and said, "Wait, do you mean culture?" I nodded. "Yeah, exactly." And we all laughed, but not at me. We laughed together, like friends do. In that moment, I realized something profound. Nobody cared about my mistakes. They cared about my message. They wanted to know my story. They wanted to connect. And that changed everything. Here's where it gets interesting. There's actually science behind this fear of being judged. Psychologists call it the spotlight effect. It's the tendency to think that people are paying way more attention to us than they actually are. A study by Thomas Gilovich at Cornell University showed that most of the time, people barely notice the things we're so self-conscious about. That means while you're obsessing about whether you said he go instead of he goes, the person listening is just thinking, cool, I understand what you mean. Here's another fact. Communication is not about perfection. It's about connection. Language is a tool, not a performance. If you deliver your message, you win. That's it. Think about this. When a child speaks, do you judge their grammar? No. You encourage them. You listen for meaning. You smile at their effort. That's how most people feel when they hear you speaking English. They admire your courage. The day I realized this truth, I changed my entire approach. I stopped asking myself, do I sound perfect? And I started asking, am I being understood? This shift gave me freedom. Suddenly, a mistake wasn't a failure. It was just part of the process. A bridge with a few cracks, but still strong enough to walk across. For example, instead of freezing when I forgot a word, I learned to explain it another way. Like if I forgot umbrella, I'd say, that thing you use when it rains. Guess what? People understood me. And often they'd give me the word. That's communication. That's teamwork. And every time that happened, I felt a little stronger. A little freer. Let me tell you about a friend of mine. She's from Brazil, and her English is, let's say, very much in progress. She once told me she was terrified to speak at work meetings because of her grammar. But then something changed. She decided that her goal wasn't to impress anyone, it was to make sure her ideas were heard. So she stopped apologizing for her English. She started raising her hand, speaking her mind. And you know what happened? Her boss didn't care about her grammar. He cared about her ideas. And soon, she was leading projects, mentoring others. Another friend from Japan told me, the day I stopped fearing judgment and started focusing on sharing my thoughts, I felt free. My English isn't perfect, but I can connect with people. And that's the point. These stories prove what I'm telling you. The world doesn't need your perfect English. It needs your voice. So, how do you practice this shift? Let me give you a few powerful strategies. 1. Focus on the message, not the grammar. Before you speak, remind yourself, my goal is to be understood, not to be perfect. 2. Reframe mistakes. When you make an error, say, good. That means I'm learning. Mistakes are proof of courage, not weakness. 3. Use simple language. You don't need big words to be impressive. Clarity is more powerful than complexity. 4. Practice paraphrasing. If you forget a word, describe it in another way. This skill alone can boost your confidence instantly. 5. Watch others. Even native speakers make mistakes. They pause, they restart, they laugh at themselves. Fluency is not perfection, it's persistence. One day, I was giving a small presentation. I was nervous. But this time, I had a new mindset. They're not judging me. They're trying to understand me. And you know what? It worked. I stumbled, I paused, I made small mistakes. But I kept going. And at the end, people came up and said, that was really interesting. Nobody said, your grammar was wrong. Nobody said, you sounded silly. Because that's not what they were listening for. They were listening for meaning. That's the secret. Your message is more important than your mistakes. So here's what I want you to take away from this video. Every time you speak English, you have two choices. You can stay silent, trapped by fear of judgment. Or you can open your mouth, share your idea, and trust that most people want to understand you. You are not on stage being graded. You are in life, building bridges. And every time you speak, with mistakes, with pauses, with courage, you win. So next time your brain screams, "They're judging me," remember my story. Remember the spotlight effect. Remember that your goal is not perfection. It's communication. Speak to be understood, not judged. Because the world needs your ideas. The world needs your voice. And your English, exactly as it is today, is already enough to connect you to that world. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this video encouraged you, share it with a friend who's afraid to speak English. And remember, every word you speak is a victory. Keep going. Keep speaking. Keep being you.